The sleek scoutship Pathfinder drifted silently through the star-speckled void, its lone occupant unaware of the danger lurking nearby. Captain Kim Jun, veteran of Earth's United Defense Force, checked his navigation systems one last time before preparing for the jump back to human space. His mission to map this unexplored sector had gone smoothly. Too smoothly, perhaps. A sudden alarm blared through the cockpit. Kim's hands flew across the control panel as a massive shadow engulfed his ship. The Pathfinder shuddered violently as an invisible force field seized it, pulling it toward the belly of a colossal vessel that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. "Stealth tech," Kim muttered, reaching for the emergency beacon. Before his fingers could activate it, a pale blue light filled the cabin. His muscles locked, his vision blurred, and darkness claimed him. When Kim regained consciousness, the familiar surroundings of his ship were gone. He lay on a cold floor in a vast, circular chamber with high walls of some transparent material. The air smelled strange, metallic yet earthy. His military training kicked in immediately. Rather than jumping to his feet, he remained still, keeping his breathing steady while scanning his environment through barely open eyes. The chamber resembled a miniature ecosystem. A small forest of alien vegetation occupied one section, while another featured a rocky outcropping with caves. A stream curved through the center, feeding into a clear pool. The entire space was bathed in light that mimicked a yellow sun, though Kim could detect no visible source. Most concerning was the sensation of being watched. Tiny sensors dotted the walls, glinting whenever he shifted his position. Someone or something was studying him. Kim slowly rose to his feet, checking himself for injuries. His uniform had been replaced with a simple grey jumpsuit. They'd taken his weapons, comm device, and even his boots. The floor beneath his bare feet felt oddly warm, almost alive. A panel slid open in the far wall, and 3 figures entered an observation deck above the chamber. Kim's blood ran cold. The aliens stood nearly 7 feet tall with slender bodies covered in pale iridescent scales. Their elongated heads housed 4 eyes, 2 large ones in front, 2 smaller ones on the sides, and they moved with an unsettling grace that reminded Kim of deep-sea predators. One of the creatures leaned toward what appeared to be a control panel. A voice echoed through the chamber, the words translated into choppy but understandable English. Subject 4729. Human male. Physical condition optimal. Commencing experiment series theta. Kim stepped forward. "Who are you? Why am I here?" His voice remained steady despite the fear churning in his gut. The aliens conferred among themselves, their language a series of clicks and whistles. Finally, the tallest one addressed him. "We are Velsic. You are part of necessary research." Survival. Assessment. Compatibility test. Compatibility with what? Kim demanded. Instead of answering, the Velsic operator pressed a sequence of symbols. 2 massive doors on opposite sides of the chamber began to open. The sound of heavy breathing filled the air, followed by the scrape of scales against stone. "Begin." "Recording," the Velsic announced to its companions. Human and Draconian Interaction Trial 1. Kim backed toward the center of the chamber, every sense on high alert. From the shadows emerged 2 massive reptilian creatures that made his heart hammer against his ribs. They resembled Earth's ancient dinosaurs, but with an intelligence burning in their amber eyes that no prehistoric beast had possessed. The Draconians stood twice Kim's height, their powerful bodies covered in thick scales ranging from deep emerald to midnight blue. Curved horns crowned their heads, and their tails whipped back and forth as they surveyed their new companion. Sharp teeth gleamed when one opened its mouth to release a rumbling hiss. Kim's mind raced through his options. No weapons, no armor, no backup. Just his wits against 2 apex predators in an enclosed space, all for the entertainment of alien scientists. One Draconian lowered its head, nostrils flaring as it caught Kim's scent. It stepped forward, claws digging into the soft earth. The other circled to Kim's left, cutting off his path to the small forest. Above, the Velsic watched with clinical detachment. "Subject shows restraint," one noted. "Previous specimens attempted immediate flight. Humans possess higher cognitive functions, another replied. This one appears to be assessing threats. Kim slowly reached down, never breaking eye contact with the closer draconian, and grabbed a handful of soil. The creature tilted its head, curious about this strange behavior. With careful movements, Kim began drawing a line in the ground between himself and the draconians, creating a boundary. The blue-scaled draconian snorted, sending twin jets of steam from its nostrils. It took another step forward, testing the human's resolve. "I know you're intelligent," Kim said softly, continuing to mark his territory. "And I know we're both pawns in their game, but we don't have to play by their rules." The draconians exchanged glances, communicating in a series of low growls. Kim couldn't understand their language, but the meaning was clear. These weren't mindless beasts. They were thinking, feeling beings, prisoners, just like him. As the tension hung in the air, Kim noticed something in the Velsik's observation deck. Their four eyes had widened slightly, their postures more rigid. They hadn't expected this reaction. They'd anticipated fear, flight, or a futile attack. Instead, they were witnessing something unexpected, the first moments of what might become an alliance. Kim smiled grimly. If the Velsik wanted a show, he'd give them one, but not the one they were expecting. The game had just begun, and he was playing to win. The larger draconian, its scales a deep midnight blue with streaks of purple, took another deliberate step toward Kim. Its massive head swung low, eyes narrowing as it studied the human who dared to stand before it. The creature's nostrils flared, taking in Kim's scent. A forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air between them. Kim remained motionless, his bare feet planted firmly on the artificial soil. Years of special operations training had taught him that predators responded to movement, to fear. Show neither, and you might survive the first crucial moments of an encounter. From the observation deck above, the Velsik scientists leaned forward, their four eyes blinking in sequential patterns. One adjusted a dial on the control panel, and a soft chime echoed through the chamber. "Subject refuses to display expected fear response," one Velsik noted, its voice a series of clicking sounds translated through hidden speakers, unusual for a prey species. Kim almost smiled at that. Prey species. If only they knew the bloody history of humanity's rise to dominance on Earth. The second draconian, smaller with emerald scales that shimmered gold at the edges, circled to Kim's left. Its movements were quicker, more agile than its larger companion. A low rumble vibrated from its chest, a warning, perhaps, or a communication to its fellow captive. "I need something," Kim muttered to himself, scanning the ground. His eyes landed on a broken branch at the edge of the artificial forest. Slowly, deliberately, he began to edge toward it, maintaining eye contact with the blue draconian. The creature tilted its head, curiosity momentarily overriding aggression. The movement reminded Kim of the raptors he'd seen in ancient Earth films, intelligent, calculating, deadly. When Kim reached the branch, he picked it up with smooth, controlled movements. It was roughly his height, sturdy enough to use as a staff. The wood felt alien in his hands, heavier than earthwood, with a strange, almost metallic quality. "Recording brainwave patterns of all subjects," a Velsik announced. "The human shows unusual neural activity in the frontal cortex." The blue draconian suddenly reared up, spreading massive wings that had been folded against its back. The wingspan stretched nearly 20 feet, leathery membranes catching the artificial light. A roar thundered through the chamber, so powerful that Kim felt it in his chest. Instead of cowering, Kim planted the staff on the ground and used it to elevate himself, making his silhouette larger. He released a war cry of his own, not as loud as the draconian's roar, but fierce enough to declare his refusal to be intimidated. The green draconian blinked, its vertical pupils dilating in what might have been surprise. "This is unprecedented," a Velsik observer commented. Previous encounters with captured species resulted in immediate dominance behavior from the draconians. Kim used the momentary confusion to his advantage. He began marking territory again, using the staff to draw a wider circle around himself. With each movement, he maintained the appearance of confidence, of ownership of his space. He'd studied enough animal behavior to know that body language was a universal language among predators. The blue draconian snorted, sending twin jets of steam from its nostrils. It took 3 thundering steps forward and stopped at the line Kim had drawn. Its massive claws just inches from the boundary. Kim stood his ground, heart hammering but expression calm. Then, with deliberate slowness, he turned his back on the creature, a calculated risk. In many predator societies, turning your back was either a sign of submission or supreme confidence. He felt the hot breath of the draconian on his neck. One swipe of those claws could end him. Instead, he heard a curious chirping sound. When Kim turned back around, the blue draconian had retreated several steps. Its wings were still partially extended, but its posture had changed. The immediate threat had passed, for now. Fascinating, a Velsic researcher commented. The human employs psychological tactics rather than physical defense, adjusting parameters of the experiment. A soft hissing sound filled the chamber as tiny vents in the walls released a purplish mist. Kim covered his mouth and nose with his sleeve, recognizing a test when he saw one. The draconians reacted immediately, the green one sneezing violently, while the blue one retreated to higher ground on the rocky outcropping. Kim analyzed his options quickly. The mist was staying low to the ground, likely heavier than air. He glanced at the trees, then back at the draconians. The blue one was watching him intently from its perch. Kim sprinted toward the forest, using his staff to vault over a particularly dense patch of the purple haze. The green draconian tracked his movement, its head swiveling with predatory precision. Reaching the tallest tree, Kim began to climb. The bark felt strange against his skin, smooth in some places, sticky in others. But it provided enough friction for him to haul himself up to the lower branches. From his new vantage point, Kim could see the entire chamber clearly. The mist had covered the ground completely now, creating an eerie, alien landscape. The blue draconian remained on its rocky perch, while the green one had followed Kim's example and climbed atop a boulder. Subject demonstrates problem-solving capabilities under duress, a Velsic noted. Adaptation to environmental threats consistent with species' evolutionary history. As the day cycle of the artificial habitat began to dim, simulating sunset, the mist gradually dissipated. Kim remained in his tree, fashioning crude tools from branches and vines. He'd created a simple spear, a sling, and what might serve as a shield if needed. The draconians watched him work from their respective territories, the blue one from the rocky area, the green one now settled near a small pool of water. An uneasy truce had formed between the 3 captives. When darkness fell completely, bioluminescent plants throughout the habitat began to glow, casting the chamber in soft blue and green light. Kim secured himself to the tree with vines, prepared for the possibility of a night attack. Below, the draconians had also settled in for the night, though Kim noticed they positioned themselves to keep him in sight. Not as prey, he thought, but as an unknown quantity, something to be watched. In the dimmed observation deck, a Velsic scientist made a final note before leaving a single monitor on night duty. Day 1 concludes with unexpected equilibrium. All subjects demonstrate advanced survival prioritization. Tomorrow, we introduce the next variable. Kim gazed up at the artificial stars projected on the chamber ceiling, his mind racing with plans for the coming day. He'd survived the first contact. Now he needed allies, even if those allies had scales, wings, and teeth that could tear him apart. Morning came with a simulated sunrise that gradually warmed the artificial habitat. Kim awoke to the sound of splashing. From his perch in the tree, he watched the emerald-scaled draconian playfully hunting fish in the stream. Its movements were precise, yet had an almost childlike quality. Quick darts followed by splashes of delight when a catch was successful. The blue draconian, meanwhile, patrolled the perimeter of the habitat with measured steps, occasionally sniffing at the transparent walls that kept them all imprisoned. After 3 days of careful observation, Kim had begun to understand their patterns. The green one, younger, more curious, spent much of its time exploring and playing. The blue one, older, warier, focused on security and dominance displays. They communicated through a complex system of chirps, rumbles, and body postures. that Kim was slowly deciphering. Kim descended from his tree home, carrying a collection of fruits he'd gathered from the higher branches. The pulpy, star-shaped fruits had proven safe to eat after he'd tested small amounts. Now, with deliberate movements, he placed 2 of the ripest specimens halfway between his territory and the stream where the green draconian hunted. Then he retreated and waited. The Velsic observers had been rotating shifts, their 4-eyed gazes constantly monitoring the interactions. One tapped notes into a glowing panel as Kim left his offering. Subject continues pattern of attempted communication through food sharing, primitive but potentially effective cross-species bonding behavior. The green draconian noticed the fruits almost immediately, its nostrils flaring as it caught their sweet scent. It approached cautiously, circling the offering 3 times before sniffing directly at the fruits. With surprising delicacy for such a large creature, it used one clawed finger to poke at the food. Kim remained still, seated cross-legged at his boundary line. When the draconian finally took one fruit in its mouth and consumed it with obvious pleasure, Kim allowed himself a small smile. "You like that, don't you?" he said softly. "I'm going to call you Tay. Means great where I come from. Seems fitting." The newly named Tay tilted its head at the sound of Kim's voice, ears twitching. It made a gentle trilling sound that Kim hadn't heard before. Not threatening, almost conversational, the blue draconian, whom Kim had decided to call Do, short for dominant, watched this exchange from the rocks, its posture rigid with disapproval. On the 5th day, the Velsic introduced their first major challenge. The temperature in the habitat dropped dramatically over the course of an hour. Kim's breath came out in white puffs as the artificial environment transformed into a winter landscape. Frost crept across the vegetation, and the stream began to freeze at its edges. "Temperature reduction protocol initiated," announced a Velsic voice. Observing adaptive responses to environmental stress, Kim immediately began gathering dry branches and leaves. His military survival training kicked in as he created a sheltered area beneath an outcropping of rocks and built a small fire using friction and dry tinder. The warm glow attracted Tay's attention almost immediately. The green draconian approached, shivering visibly despite its thick scales. Do watched from a distance, its own massive body beginning to slow in the cold. Draconians, Kim realized, were likely cold-blooded, or at least temperature-sensitive in ways humans weren't. "Come on," Kim called to Tay, gesturing toward the fire. "It's warmer here." After a moment's hesitation, Tay approached, settling its massive body near the flames. The effect was immediate. The draconian's shivering subsided, and its scales seemed to drink in the heat, glowing more vibrantly. Do remained distant, pride or suspicion keeping it away despite obvious discomfort. "Are your friends welcome too?" Kim said to Tay. Pointing toward Donte made a series of chirping calls that echoed through the frosted habitat. Do's head snapped up, its eyes narrowing. After what seemed like an internal debate, the blue draconian slowly made its way toward the fire, keeping a wary eye on Kim. "The human demonstrates tool use for environmental control," noted a Velsic observer. "More significantly, it appears to be sharing this adaptation with the draconians." "Unprecedented cooperative behavior," replied another. "Previous subjects competed for resources." By the 8th day, the 3 captives had established a routine. Kim would gather food and maintain the fire, which had become essential as the Velsic kept the temperature uncomfortably low. Tay would hunt in the stream, bringing back fish that Kim would cook over the flames. Even Do had begun to contribute, using its powerful wings to knock fruits from the highest branches that Kim couldn't reach. When the Velsic introduced a swarm of stinging insect-like creatures on the 10th day, Kim taught the draconians how to create smoke to drive them away. When acid rain fell from the artificial sky, he showed them how to build shelters using branches and large leaves. "Look," Kim explained one evening, drawing diagrams in the dirt. "If we position ourselves here, here, and here, we can see all approaches. Nothing can surprise us." Tay watched attentively, occasionally mimicking Kim's hand movements. Do had begun to understand simple hand signals: stop, go, danger, food. The Velsic researchers added more detailed notes to their observations. Subjects have formed a functional social unit. The human appears to be teaching defensive and survival strategies from its homeworld. The Draconians are demonstrating unprecedented learning abilities. On the 14th day, the biggest challenge arrived. A door opened in the habitat wall, and a six-legged predator with metallic skin and glowing red eyes stalked into their territory. Its body was clearly biomechanical, a creation of the Velsic designed to test their survival capabilities. "Threat assessment protocol initiated," announced the observation deck. Kim grabbed his spear, moving immediately to position himself between the creature and the fire pit that had become their shared home. Tay hissed a warning, wings flaring in a defensive posture. The robot beast charged, its metal claws tearing up the ground. Kim whistled sharply, the signal he'd taught his companions for coordinated action. Two finally fully integrated into their group, launched from the rocks, creating a diversion that drew the predator's attention. As the creature turned, Kim and Tay struck simultaneously from opposite sides, Kim driving his spear into a joint between the metal plates while Tay used its powerful tail to sweep the beast's legs. The predator stumbled, electronic growls emanating from its mechanical throat. It tried to right itself, but Doe landed heavily on its back, using sharp claws to tear into exposed wiring. In less than 2 minutes, the threat had been neutralized, the robot beast lying disabled on the ground. The three defenders stood around, it breathing heavily but unharmed. In the observation deck, the Velsic were silent, 4 eyes wide as they processed what they had just witnessed. "They fought together," one finally said. "Coordinated tactics, communication across species barriers. The experiment has exceeded all parameters," another replied. "They were supposed to compete, not cooperate." Kim looked up at the observation deck, a determined smile crossing his face. He knew the Velsic were watching, and he knew that whatever they had planned next, they weren't ready for what 3 united prisoners could accomplish. Kim woke to the sound of hissing, not the familiar communication of his draconian companions, but the mechanical release of pressure. A sickly green mist began seeping through vents near the floor of the habitat. His eyes burned immediately, and his throat constricted with the first accidental breath. "Gas!" he shouted, scrambling to his feet. "Tay, do! Get to higher ground!" The Draconians reacted instantly to the urgency in his voice. Tay spread its wings and launched toward the highest rock formation, while Du, already alert, bellowed a warning call that echoed throughout the chamber. Kim wrapped a strip of cloth torn from his jumpsuit around his nose and mouth, but it provided little protection. His lungs felt like they were filling with fire. Through watering eyes, he looked up at the observation deck. The usual team of Velsic researchers was gone, replaced by figures in protective suits. One was adjusting controls, increasing the flow of the toxic gas. "They're trying to kill us," Kim realized with sudden clarity. Whatever data the Velsic had wanted, they'd collected it. Now they were disposing of the test subjects. Ty screeched from its perch, wings beating frantically to try to disperse the rising gas. Du had pressed itself against the highest point of the habitat wall, claws digging into the smooth surface as it tried to find fresh air. Kim forced his increasingly foggy mind to focus. They needed to escape, not just survive this particular challenge. His gaze fell on the disabled robot predator they'd defeated days earlier. Its metal hide might contain components he could use. Fighting against the burning in his lungs, Kim dragged himself to the fallen machine. He pried open a panel on its side, revealing a tangle of circuits and power cells. With fumbling fingers, he extracted what looked like a compact energy source, a glowing blue cylinder that hummed with contained power. "Tay," he called hoarsely. "I need you." The green draconian glided down, landing beside Kim with a thud. Its normally bright scales had dulled, and its breathing came in labored gasps. Kim pointed at the transparent wall separating them from the observation deck. "We need to break through," he wheezed, holding up the power cell. "This might help, but I need to get closer." Tay seemed to understand. It lowered its body, allowing Kim to climb onto its back. With the last of his strength, Kim signaled to Doe, pointing at the main door where the Velsic entered the habitat. Doe's eyes narrowed with understanding. The blue draconian gathered itself, then launched toward the door with a thunderous roar, slamming its massive body against the entrance. The impact shuddered through the entire chamber. The Velsic in protective suits scattered in alarm, rushing to controls to contain the situation. With the attention diverted, Tay carried Kim to the observation wall. Kim pressed the power cell against the transparent material, looking for any sign of a connection point. Finally, he spotted it, a nearly invisible maintenance panel where the wall met the ceiling. "Up there," he gasped to Tay, pointing. Tay beat its wings powerfully, fighting the effects of the gas to gain altitude. Kim reached up and pried open the small panel, revealing a complex array of alien technology. Without hesitation, he jammed the power cell into what appeared to be an input port. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the power cell pulsed once, twice, and exploded in a controlled burst of energy that shattered the observation wall. Alarms immediately blared throughout the ship as the habitat's atmospheric containment was breached. Kim and Tay tumbled through the opening into the observation deck. Clean air rushed into Kim's lungs, bringing painful clarity back to his thoughts. Two Velsic technicians stood frozen in shock, their four eyes blinking rapidly as they processed the impossible. Their specimens had escaped. Kim didn't give them time to react. He lunged forward, tackling the nearest Velsic to the ground. The Sci's alien was surprisingly light despite its tall frame, its bones feeling hollow under Kim's grip. He pinned it while Tay cornered the second technician with a threatening display of teeth and claws. "Shut off the gas," Kim demanded, his voice rough from the toxic exposure. "Now." The pinned Velsic clicked rapidly to its companion, who carefully reached for the control panel. The hissing in the habitat stopped immediately, and vents in the ceiling opened to clear the remaining gas. Dew, still inside the habitat, roared its approval as fresh air flowed in. With renewed strength, it launched another attack on the main door, this time causing the locking mechanism to visibly buckle. "Communication systems," Kim ordered, hauling the Velsic researcher to its feet and pushing it toward another console. "Show me." The alien hesitated, then pointed to a station with a glowing interface unlike the others. Kim dragged his captive toward it, studying the symbols that scrolled across the screen. "This connects to the rest of the ship?" The Velsic nodded, its neck bending at an unnatural angle. Just then, dew finally broke through the habitat door with a crash of tearing metal. The blue draconian stormed into the control room, its massive form barely fitting through the doorway. It positioned itself at the main entrance, blocking any potential reinforcements from entering. "Perfect timing," Kim said with a grim smile. He turned back to the communication console and began experimenting with the controls. His experience with various alien tech during his military career gave him just enough knowledge to make educated guesses about the system's function. After several tense minutes, he managed to access what appeared to be the ship's internal communications. Taking a deep breath, Kim broadcast a message throughout the vessel. "Attention all Velsic crew, this is test subject 4729. Your experiment has concluded with unexpected results. We have taken control of Habitat Section 3 and have access to all environmental controls. Attempt to stop us, and we will decompress every research section on this level." He wasn't sure if the threat would work. He hadn't actually figured out how to control the other sections yet, but the bluff might buy them time. "Now," Kim said, turning to the terrified Velsic technicians, "you're going to tell me where the other test subjects are being held, and then you're going to help us free them." The ship's alarms continued to wail as Kim studied a schematic the reluctant technician pulled up on screen. There were dozens of other habitats, each containing captured specimens from across the galaxy. Tay chirped excitedly, recognizing images of its own kind in one of the habitats. Dew rumbled low in its throat, a sound Kim had come to recognize as determined agreement. "Looks like we're starting a full-scale rebellion," Kim said, allowing himself a moment of hope. "And our captors have no idea what they've created by throwing us together." As security alerts flashed across the screen, Kim laid out the next phase of their plan. Freedom was within reach, not just for them, but for every creature trapped in the Velsic's cruel experiments. The command center doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Kim stood firm, flanked by his draconian allies. Dew's massive form cast an intimidating shadow across the polished floor, while Tay's alert eyes scanned for threats. Behind them, a menagerie of freed test subjects filled the corridor, beings of all shapes and sizes from across the galaxy. united by their shared captivity and newfound freedom. A tall Velsic stepped forward, distinguished from the others by elaborate markings on its iridescent scales and a ceremonial collar that glowed with embedded technology. 4 eyes, larger and more intensely violet than those of the other Velsic, fixed on Kim with unnerving focus. "I am Sun, captain of this research vessel," the Velsic announced, its translated voice smoother than the technician's. "You have caused considerable damage to a scientific mission of galactic importance." Kim stepped forward, refusing to be intimidated. "Scientific? You were going to gas us to death when your research was complete." Captain Sun's head tilted in what might have been acknowledgement. "Termination protocols are standard for completed experimental subjects. Efficiency is valued in our work." "Your work?" Kim spat the words. "Kidnapping sentient beings and forcing them to fight for survival. What exactly are you researching?" The command center remained tense with Velsic crew members at their stations, hands hovering over what Kim suspected were weapon controls. Du sensed the tension and rumbled a warning deep in its chest, causing several Velsic to step back involuntarily. Captain Sun gestured toward a large holographic display at the center of the room. It flickered to life, showing star systems and planets marked with unfamiliar symbols. "We are at war," Sun stated simply, "a conflict spanning 17 systems against an enemy that adapts faster than conventional weapons can counter. The dynasty requires new tactical advantages, biological, weapons that can think, adapt, and destroy." The display shifted to show recordings of various test subjects fighting within their habitats. Desperate battles for survival that the Velsic had orchestrated and studied with clinical detachment. "You were looking for killers," Kim said, the realization dawning on him. "Testing species to find the most effective predators, the most ruthless survivors," Sun corrected. "Those with the instinct and capacity to dominate others could be replicated, enhanced and deployed against our enemies." Tay chirped softly, pressing closer to Kim's side. The green draconian had grown protective of its human companion over their weeks together. Kim rested a hand on Tay's scaled neck in a gesture of reassurance. "Your experiment failed," Kim said. "Instead of fighting each other, we worked together. Instead of dominating, we cooperated." Sun's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. A gesture Kim had learned indicated surprise or reassessment. "Yes, an unexpected outcome. You were the first to form cross-species alliances rather than establish dominance hierarchies, particularly surprising given humanity's historical behavior." Kim felt dozens of eyes on him, the freed test subjects, the Velsic crew, and his draconian companions all waiting to see what would happen next. The fate of everyone aboard hung on this moment. "Your war isn't our problem," Kim said firmly. "What we want is freedom. Transport vessels to return everyone to their home planets, or the nearest neutral spaceport if home is too far." Sun's upper eyes narrowed. "The dynasty has invested considerable resources in this research. The subjects are valuable property." Du roared, the sound reverberating through the command center. Several control panels sparked in response to the sonic force. The message needed no translation. The captives were no longer property. Kim pressed his advantage. "You have 2 options, Captain. Option 1, you provide transport and let everyone go. Your crew survives, and you report that your experiment yielded unexpected but valuable data about interspecies cooperation." Sun's head tilted. "And option 2, Kim gestured to the dozens of freed beings behind him. "We take your ship. Many of us won't survive the attempt, but neither will your crew." The threat hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Kim had no desire for more bloodshed, but the Velsic didn't need to know that. "There is logic in your proposal," Sun finally conceded. "The dynasty values data above all. The unexpected cooperation between traditionally hostile species represents a significant finding worthy of further study." "Not by kidnapping more test subjects," Kim insisted. "No," Sun agreed after a moment. "Perhaps through diplomatic channels instead. Your alliance suggests possibilities our scientists had not considered." Over the next day, Kim supervised as the Velsic prepared transport vessels. Each ship was stocked with appropriate food, atmosphere, and navigation systems for its passengers. One by one, The former captives departed for their home worlds, many expressing gratitude to Kim and his draconian companions through gestures, vocalizations, or translated messages. When the last transport was ready, Captain Sun approached Kim one final time. "Your vessel is prepared for departure. It will return you to human space." Kim looked at the single-occupant scout ship, then back at Tay and Do. The Draconians had remained by his side throughout the liberation process, refusing separate transport to their home world. "We need something bigger," Kim said. "The three of us are staying together." Sun's eyes blinked rapidly. "A permanent cross-species unit? Unprecedented." "That's kind of our specialty," Kim replied with a smile. Hours later, Kim stood at the viewport of their new ship, a modified Velsic scout vessel large enough to accommodate 2 full-grown Draconians and a human. Stars streaked past as they accelerated away from the research vessel. Do operated the navigational controls with surprising dexterity for its massive claws. Tay chirped excitedly from the communication station, already learning to interpret the various signals from nearby systems. "Where to first?" Kim asked his companions. Tay trilled and pointed to a star chart showing a neutral trading hub, a place where species from across the galaxy gathered to exchange goods and information. "Perfect," Kim agreed. "If we're going to be mediators between species, we should start where they already meet." As their ship accelerated to jump speed, Kim reflected on the strange journey that had brought them together. Captured as test subjects, expected to destroy each other, they had instead formed something new, something powerful enough to change the course of their lives and perhaps eventually the galaxy itself. The stars blurred into streaks of light. As they made the jump, 3 unlikely allies heading toward a future none of them could have imagined alone. The